The cathedral was quiet, save for the soft rustle of silk and the whispered prayers of guests who had come to witness the union of two noble houses. Sunlight streamed through the tall, stained glass windows, casting colored patterns on the polished marble floor. Ilara stood at the altar, her hands clutching the bouquet tightly, her heart pounding in her chest. The gentle warmth of the morning should have been comforting, but it felt hollow. She looked toward the aisle, expecting to see Darian, her groom, walking toward her with the proud and steady confidence of a man who loved her. But the aisle remained empty. Minutes passed, and a cold, creeping dread settled over her like a heavy cloak. Guests shifted uneasily, murmuring among themselves. The soft strain of music faltered as the organist looked around. Confused, and then he appeared, not walking down the aisle, but standing at the edge of the entrance, staring at her with an expression she had never seen before. Not love, not even hesitation. It was something colder, sharper. "I can't," Darian said, his voice steady, almost cruel in its calmness. "I cannot marry you, Ilara." The words hit her like a physical blow. Gasps echoed through the cathedral, the color draining from faces around her. Ilara's hand tightened on the bouquet so hard she thought she might crush it. What do you mean?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I mean exactly what I said," Darian replied, stepping back, as if removing himself from the world they had built together. "There are things about your past, about your life, that I cannot accept. I cannot marry you, not with the shadow that follows you." Ilara's throat tightened. Her past was not shameful. It was merely hers. A life of struggle and resilience that had forged her into the woman standing before a sea of judgment. Yet here it was laid bare like a brand, and she felt every eye in the room turned to her. Heavy with pity and disgust, her child, small and wide-eyed, clutched the hand of the maid of honor, sensing the tension in the air. Ilara tried to summon courage, to speak, to defend herself, but no words came. She only felt the weight of abandonment pressing against her chest. Before she could step forward, before she could even move, a sharp, commanding voice echoed from the shadows of the cathedral's doorway. "Then she is mine." Heads turned, whispers spread like wildfire through the stunned crowd. From the darkness of the back pews, a man stepped forward, tall and imposing. His presence alone seemed to bend the air, casting a shadow that reached the altar itself. Lucien, the Mafia boss. The man whispered about in half-fearful legends, the one who seemed to hold both the city and its secrets in his iron grip. Yet now he looked not at Darian but at Ilara, his eyes glinting with an unreadable intensity. Ilara felt a shiver run down her spine. There was danger in him, yes, but there was also a strange kind of certainty. In that moment she realized that her life would never be the same again. Darian's face twisted in disbelief and anger. "You can't, she's not yours." Lucian's gaze didn't waver. He stepped closer, and every footfall seemed to echo like a drumbeat of power. "If he refuses her," he said, his voice low, calm, and chilling in its control, "then I claim what he would not. She will be protected, she will be safe, and she will be with me." The words struck a strange chord within Ilara. She had been abandoned, humiliated, and yet here was someone offering protection, a promise that came with danger. Yes, but also with certainty, strength, and something else she could not name. The cathedral felt smaller, the sunlight dimmer as Lucien extended his hand toward her. It was not a gesture of softness but of command, and oddly, Ilara felt an unfamiliar pull, a magnetic force that made her feet move forward before her mind could object. I don't know," she whispered, fear and disbelief warring in her chest. "You don't need to know," Lucien said, his voice like velvet wrapped around steel. "You only need to trust that you will not face the world alone." She glanced back at Darian, whose face had turned red with anger and frustration. He opened his mouth to say something, but the words died before they left him. For the first time, Ilara realized that the life she had imagined with him was gone, and that she had a choice. Not one of freedom, perhaps, but one that could offer safety for her child and herself. The decision did not come easily. Every fiber of her being screamed caution. She had survived betrayal before, and she would not fall so easily under another's control. Yet Lucien's presence was different. It was not just fear he inspired. It was the promise of strength, of protection, of a life where the shadows would not touch her as deeply as they had today. Her hand trembled as she reached out and took his. The moment their fingers touched, A strange warmth spread through her wrist, an energy she could not explain. It was not pain. It was not comfort. It was a bond, something ancient, almost alive, that seemed to mark her as claimed yet not imprisoned. The guests shifted uncomfortably, some daring to murmur about scandal and impropriety. But Alara's attention was entirely on Lucien. He looked at her as if he were studying her soul, not her dress, not her status, not the scandal. And in that gaze she felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. "We leave now," Lucien said, his grip firm but not cruel. "Your past, your fears, your enemies, they will not touch you while I stand." Alara's heart pounded as she nodded, stepping forward. She felt the eyes of the city on her, the whispers trailing behind them like ghostly chains, but she did not look back, not yet. She could not. As they moved through the cathedral doors, the sunlight outside seemed harsher, more blinding than before. Lucien's hand never left hers. She felt the strange mark on her wrist pulse slightly, almost as if acknowledging the bond between them. They walked through the streets in silence. The city, normally bustling and chaotic, seemed muted, aware of their passage. Citizens peeked from behind shutters, some in fear, some in awe. The underworld of the city, the realm where Lucien ruled, was close, invisible but palpable, waiting for them. When they arrived at his fortress-like mansion on the edge of the city, Alara paused, taking in the towering black gates, the stone walls etched with strange runes and symbols that glowed faintly in the fading light. It was both beautiful and terrifying. This place," she whispered, awe and fear mingling in her voice. "It is unlike anything I've ever seen." Lucien's eyes softened just slightly, but his grip remained firm. "It is safe," he said simply, "and for now that is all you need." Inside, the mansion was shadowed, candlelit, and strangely alive. Whispered echoes seemed to follow them through the corridors. Alara felt the weight of history here, of power, of secrets, of lives lived and lost. And yet, for the first time, she felt a strange comfort. She was no longer alone. Lucien led her to a room that was both simple and commanding. A place where she could rest, where her child could sleep safely, and where the city's dangers could not reach her. "I will not force you," he said quietly, his hand lingering near hers though not touching. "You will stay because you choose to. But know this. Outside these walls, the world is cruel and many will wish you harm. Inside, you will have what you need to survive." Alara nodded, feeling a mix of relief and unease. She had been betrayed today, abandoned, but she also realized something profound. Her life had shifted irrevocably, and while fear lingered, so did a strange, dangerous thrill. That night, as she lay in the quiet room, her child asleep beside her, Alara traced the faint, glowing mark on her wrist. She did not know what it meant, but she felt the power it carried. She realized she had made a choice, one that would bind her to a man of darkness and mystery. Yet as sleep finally claimed her, a single thought lingered in her mind. Heavy and insistent, this is only the beginning. Outside, shadows moved in the city streets. Whispers of revenge, of jealousy, and of power stirred in the night air. And from the darkness, Darian's anger smoldered, his plans for vengeance already taking shape. Alara slept, unaware that the path she had chosen would test her heart, her courage, and her very soul. And Lucien, he watched over her, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his lips, knowing that the bond between them had been forged. But even he could not foresee the trials, the temptations, or the truths that the night ahead would bring. The city slept uneasily beneath a sky heavy with clouds, their edges tinged with the faint glow of the rising moon. Inside the fortress-like mansion, Alara stirred from a restless sleep. Her child lay beside her, breathing softly, and the faint mark on her wrist pulsed like a heartbeat in the quiet room. She had never known a night of such stillness, yet a whisper of unease clung to her thoughts. Lucien was already awake. She could feel his presence before she saw him, an almost tangible weight that filled the hall outside her room. When he entered, his dark eyes held the calm of a predator, yet there was something softer in their depths this morning. "You did not sleep well," he observed, his voice low like velvet sliding over steel. Alara shook her head, tugging the blanket closer. I keep thinking about him." Her voice trembled slightly, but she did not say the name. Darian, the man who had abandoned her at the altar. Lucien's expression remained unreadable, but his fingers brushed lightly over the edge of her bed as he stepped closer. "Let him go," he said simply. "He cannot harm you here. I don't know if it's him I'm afraid of or everything he represents, she admitted. The life I thought I had. The dreams that are gone. I keep asking myself, did I make the right choice? Lucien did not answer immediately. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze steady and intense. Then quietly he said, the right choice is the one that keeps you alive. The rest will follow in time. Her eyes met his, and for a brief instant she felt something shift, a strange sense of trust, of understanding, that had been impossible to feel with anyone else. It was frightening and yet comforting. The days that followed were a mix of careful lessons and quiet observation. Elara learned the ways of Lucien's world, not just the rules of power, but the unseen forces that lingered in the shadows. She discovered that he was more than a man of influence. He carried a subtle, almost supernatural strength. Rumors whispered of curses and ancient bonds, and though she was skeptical, she could not deny the strange power that seemed to surround him. And yet, despite his formidable presence, there were moments, rare, fleeting, when Lucien's armor slipped. He would speak softly to her child, or linger near her with quiet patience, offering gestures of kindness that were so unusual, so unexpected, that Elara could not help but feel the pull of something deeper than fear or gratitude. One evening, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, the wind whipping through their hair, Darian's shadow appeared in her mind again. His betrayal had left a mark, not on her wrist but on her heart. He will come for you, Lucien said, reading the thought in her eyes. And when he does, he will bring ruin in his wake. Elara clenched her fists. I don't care about him anymore. I care about my child. I care about surviving, but I can't stop thinking about the life I lost. About him. Lucien's hand brushed against hers, almost casually, yet there was an electricity in the touch that made her pulse quicken. Life is never as simple as we imagine, he said. We carry shadows with us, and sometimes we must choose which shadows to follow. The next day the threat came. Darian arrived, accompanied by a group of well-dressed men who bore the airs of wealth and arrogance. He demanded to see her, to explain, to take her back. Elara's heart thundered as she faced him across the room, her child clinging to her side. Darian's face was a mask of regret, of desperation. I was wrong, he said. I never should have left you. Please come back with me. Forget this. All of this. Her voice was steady, though her hands shook. I cannot go back, she said. I cannot return to the man who abandoned me when I needed him most. Darian's eyes flashed with anger, then sorrow, then something darker. You belong to me, he said, and the words hung in the air like a curse. Lucien stepped forward, and the air seemed to change. The shadows in the corners of the room stretched and twisted as if responding to him. She belongs to no one but herself, he said calmly, his voice carrying a power that made the men step back instinctively. And if anyone wishes to test that, they will learn the price of their mistake. Darian's face paled, and without another word he retreated, leaving behind the echoes of anger and the faint scent of betrayal. Elara turned to Lucien, her chest heaving. You didn't even raise your voice, she said, astonished. I didn't need to, he replied. He feared the shadow around me, and that fear protects you as well. Days turned into weeks. Elara learned more about Lucien's world, its rules, its dangers, and the loyalty he commanded. She discovered that the mark on her wrist was not a symbol of ownership, but of connection. It pulsed whenever danger approached, and sometimes when Lucien was near, it glowed faintly, as if acknowledging their bond. Slowly, a delicate thread of trust grew between them. Elara felt herself drawn to him, not just for safety, but for something more profound. His strength, his calm, and even his darkness fascinated her. She saw moments of tenderness, glimpses of the man beneath the legend of the Mafia boss. And in return, Lucien seemed to soften in ways that no one else had ever witnessed. One night, as a storm rolled in over the city, lightning illuminating the jagged spires and flashes, Elara found herself alone with Lucien in the grand hall. The storm outside mirrored the tumult inside her heart, the mix of fear, desire, and longing she could no longer ignore. I never asked for this, she whispered. I never imagined my life would come to this. Shadows and power and danger at every turn. Lucien stepped closer, his eyes dark and intense. None of us asks for life to be easy, he said. But we are given choices. And sometimes, the choices we fear the most are the ones that lead to the truth. She looked up at him, and for the first time she saw not the Mafia boss, not the legend, not the shadow that surrounded him, but the man. The man who had chosen to protect her, who had chosen to stand beside her when the world had turned its back. "I don't know if I can," she began, her voice trailing off, uncertain. "You can," Lucian said, his voice firm yet gentle, "because I will not let you fall. Because I will not let anyone harm you. And because I see you, truly, completely." Her chest tightened as the words settled over her like a warm, protective shroud. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel hope, even as fear lingered at the edges. The storm outside grew fiercer, thunder shaking the walls, lightning casting strange shadows that danced across the hall. Ilara's gaze met Lucian's, and in that instant, a silent understanding passed between them. A bond forged not in force, but in choice, in trust, and in the promise of protection and connection. Yet even in that moment of fragile peace, danger lingered. A messenger arrived from Darien, carrying threats veiled in polite words, warning of revenge and schemes that would not rest. The city itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash between past and present, between shadow and light. Ilara knew that the days ahead would test her courage, her heart, and her loyalty. She knew that Lucien's world was dangerous, and yet she also knew that she could not return to the life she had lost. And Lucien... He watched her, the faintest smile tugging at the corner of his lips, knowing that their bond had been sealed. He understood that the trials ahead would not only challenge their strength, but would also test their hearts in ways neither could predict. As the storm raged outside, Ilara and Lucian stood together in the great hall, shadows flickering across the walls, the city's lights barely visible through the rain. Their hands brushed, not in ownership but in mutual understanding, and in that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. For the first time, Ilara felt the strange thrill of living on the edge of something dangerous, something forbidden, yet undeniable. She felt the pull of destiny, of choice, and of a bond that promised both protection and transformation. But even as she embraced the fragile warmth of trust and connection, a single thought lingered in her mind, sharp and insistent. The shadows are coming, and we must face them together or be consumed. Outside the walls of the mansion, the city stirred with unseen forces. The whispers of revenge, jealousy, and ambition grew louder, and in the heart of the storm, Darien's plans twisted toward vengeance while Lucian's power waited, silent, ready, and watching. The night held its breath, and so did Ilara.